I've always thought it was kind of unfair when people criticize climate activists by saying, you can't live without fossil fuels. Look at your phone, your computer, your yoga mat. Where do you think all that plastic comes from? And I think, well, I own those things. But that's because the store doesn't sell a non-plastic version. But if I'm going to cut down my carbon emissions, I really do want to cut down on my plastics use.
The plastic industry is a climate menace, really, for...
That's Stephen Feit. He's a senior attorney on the Climate Energy Program at the Center for International Environmental Law. He helped author a report on plastics and climate change. He says part of the problem is that plastics are carbon intensive to produce and dispose of. Plus, they're just fossil fuels in another form.
Petrochemicals broadly, of which plastics are the major component, are expected to be the largest driver of growth in oil and gas demand over the next several decades.
So lately, I've been seeing this "you can't live without plastic" thing as kind of a challenge. Can I live without plastic? And if so, how do I do it?
I don't know. When you figure it out, you tell me, okay?
That's my CBC colleague, Amy Hadley. A few years back, she did a whole series on her efforts to quit buying plastic. So I figured, awesome, I'll just turn this over to her and she can tell me what to do. But it turns out she never truly achieved zero plastic in her life, in part because plastic kept turning up in places that she wasn't expecting it.
In the linings of, say, like cardboard containers for certain products to, keep the liquid from seeping through, or in the lining of tin cans.
How did plastic get to be everywhere?
In a way, it's kind of a boring answer because it's really just about industry profit, right?
That's Heather Davis. She's an assistant professor of culture and media at Eugene Lane College at the New School in New York. She wrote a book called Plastic Matter. Heather says the history of plastic is really about the oil industry trying to create revenue streams out of its byproducts. But at first, single-use plastics were not an easy sell to people who had just lived through the Second World War.
This was incredibly counterintuitive to a population that for the majority of their life had been told to save and reuse. And it took a huge amount of effort on the side of the plastics industry to convince people to kind of embrace a kind of consumer throwaway kind of lifestyle.
So is there a way that we can turn this ship around and stop buying this stuff?
So, like, shopping at the bulk store was a huge one for me.
Amy did give me plenty of tips for how to cut out plastic as much as possible. This, for example, is the giant box of toilet paper I bought from an office supply store with rolls wrapped in paper instead of plastic. And these are my bars of shampoo and conditioner. But she says one of her takeaways from this experiment is that it's just not fair to hold individuals solely responsible for our plastic consumption.
Like, I really believe also that there needs to be larger action from larger corporate government actors to actually make a difference.
Heather says some of those government actions should include making companies pay the full cost of recycling their products, something many Canadian jurisdictions are working on. She also advocates for single-use plastic bans, something Canada is working on. But Amy still thinks it's important that we keep doing what we can as individuals.
I don't think those larger actors are going to make the change unless people demand it, right? So it's a catch-22. We have to show that we care about this.
So, I don't love these shampoo bars, but I will put up with them in the name of doing my part. For CBC Radio, I'm Heather Kitching.